Can be replaced as long as it's with a taller, funnier Jew named Judy Gold.
Yes.
And I'll take it. I'll take it.
East Coast lesbian Jew has replaced
That's right.
West Coast lesbian Jew. Comedian. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Jews will not replace us unless it's with another
Unless it's
Jew.
Judy Gold.
Yeah, unless it's with another Jew.
All right. So I gotta say, just this is my hometown, Buffalo. So it is particularly just it's a bad week for America as usual when this happens. But I think it's Do you remember, when was it, a few years ago? Remember Janet Reno was forced to back down. That was how long ago they put out a report saying our number one problem is white supremacist, right-wing domestic terrorism. And that's how long we've known this, right? But the right wing went crazy. And it just reminded me, this disinformation board, they just had to basically put their work on pause because the right wing screamed again. And in this case, it's about disinformation coming from Russia, who, by the way, installed a United States president here in 2016. You'd think both sides of the aisle would care about that, but one side doesn't because it was their
100%.
side. So the Department of Homeland Security paused its new disinformation governance board Wednesday, and its board's director will resign following weeks of criticism from Republicans. Nina Jankowicz, I saw her last night. She's fantastic. I saw her on TV. She was picked to lead the board. She wrote in her resignation letter, the board's future was uncertain. Some of the attacks on Jankowicz have used sexist and anti-Semitic slurs. A Fox News personality recently questioned whether she should have agreed to lead the board while pregnant. Conservative pundits and right-leaning media had focused directly on Jankowicz, a researcher on Russian disinformation, who was named... Dana, what do you do when half a party and a network is Russian disinformation? Of course they don't want Russian disinformation called out. Some nights you can't tell the difference between RT and Tucker Carlson's show. Whether it's
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know that Fox News should not, it shouldn't even be considered a news organization. It's an entertainment network. They're not even registered. Fox News isn't a news organization. And the other thing is we need to get louder. Our side needs to get louder. Every time they say disinformation, every time they spread lies, call it what it is, we have to counteract it with something that is actually truth and somehow try and get the message out on a larger base. But these
Glenn
people
Kirshner
are brainwashed.
Said,
They're brainwashed.
We have to flood the zone with good. That's all we can do on our side.
That's all we can do.
Jankowicz said in her letter, it's deeply disappointing that mischaracterizations of the board became a distraction from the department's vital work, and indeed, along with recent events globally and nationally, embodies why it's necessary. Russia has tried to influence the last two presidential elections by boosting false stories and using social media to inflame divisions in American society on issues like race and the coronavirus pandemic. It has continued to spread false and misleading narratives about its invasion of Ukraine. And it is just astounding, still to this day to me, Dana, to have one party that's good with that and helping with that. And
Absolutely.
When are people going to get... Vladimir Putin wants anything that's bad for America. He wants race war, race fights, and he wants division, and he wants a completely incompetent president like Donald Trump. He wants whatever's bad for America. He wants more Americans to die of COVID. And that's what this board was about.
And as good as our technology is in this country, to think that they can't find and weed out Russian lies and disinformation that's being spread on public platforms like Zuckerman's, like Twitter, like all of these things, it is absurd to believe that they can't do that. They can, they choose not to. And it's all about money.
Yeah. I mean, people were putting, they were doing this whole Big Brother, George Orwell. They were putting out claims that Jankowicz was going to edit the tweets of everyday Twitter users, just all this nonsense. But Karine Jean-Pierre talked about this yesterday.
The Department of Homeland Security, they began their statement repeating that the board had been intentionally mischaracterized, which is a little bit of what you were asking me, and they were explicit about what it does and does not do. It was never about censorship, policing speech, or removing content from anywhere. Its function was to keep Homeland Security officials aware of how bad actors, including human smugglers, transnational criminal organization, and foreign adversaries could use disinformation to advance their goals.
National security threats, Dana, national, against all of us. And
100%.
But this is the problem. They don't want that. They don't want to protect us from national security threats because it goes because Russia helps them. I mean,
they're loving the division in this country.
Yeah.
The right, everyone on the right. I mean, when you've got 9 members of Congress that are voting against baby formula for infants, but then they're coming out as pro-life, like go F yourself. Like I can't even with that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a large population in Congress and on the right that have power and refuse to do anything about this.
Yeah, and more importantly, want to make it worse before the midterms. Right?
Absolutely.
They
I mean,
do not
Jim
want
Jordan
to
wore a jacket the other day.
Oh my God.
Things are getting real.
Things are getting serious.
Jim Jordan wore his blazer because he wanted to say, we've never been a party of white nationalism. And I guess he looks less racist if he's got a blazer on the Congress floor.
It's interesting he wouldn't wear a jacket mostly since he's so good at covering everything else up. It is interesting.
Indeed.
Yes. Okay. Kareem Jean-Pierre, one more.
So if it's pausing because you think the board was mischaracterized, then the disinformation board is being shut down because of disinformation? Is that what's happening here?
Look, I mean, the board was put forth for a purpose, right? To make sure that we really did address what was happening across the country when it came to disinformation.
And it's okay to wait now, 75 days.
It's just it's going to pause. There's been a mischaracterizations from outside forces, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to pause it and we're going to do an assessment. But the work doesn't stop. We're still going to continue the work. The DHS is still going to continue.
Yeah. Let's hope so. Speaking of disinformation, Marjorie Taylor Greene said yesterday the real racists are the media that are trying to blame Republicans for white replacement theory. Didn't Laura Ingraham also try this? That it's the left that are the racists because something.
They send out
even
the
though
racist back call. They get all the same talking points.
The Buffalo shooters, manifesto could literally be lifted from a Tucker Carlson monologue or a Lee Stefanik
ad.
I mean,
100%.
Yeah, and so. Yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene said, let's see. So while the national media is losing their mind over white supremacy, trying to blame Republicans for white replacement theory.
Oh, we've got this.
Trying to link this to mentally ill. Oh, do we have the
20.
Yes. Oh, let's hear her
All right,
soothing
here
tone.
we go.
Oh, God, I'd rather you read it.
Here we go. Steel yourself.
So, while the national media is losing their mind over white supremacy, trying to blame Republicans for white replacement theory, trying to link us to this mentally ill, deranged teenager that killed people in Buffalo. They ignore things like shootings here in Washington, D.C. under Mayor Muriel Bowser's purview.
You're right. It's the sibilant S that makes this sound even stupider than when I...
ignorant from the South.
Okay. He's a mentally ill teenager. He's an 18-year-old adult. Right.
Of course he is.
Yeah. Okay. She went on to say.
If he was black, on the other hand.
They completely ignore people like Kathleen Landerkin that is so racist herself, and that she hates the people that she has in her jail. The mainstream media should take a look at race a little more clearly and see that really the leftists in the media are the real racists.
Oh, I see. So she's Kathleen. She runs the jail where the January 6th insurrectionists are in, and because they're white, she's a racist because they're in jail because they're
insurrectionists
committed crimes. Speaking of accountable, I want to know what you and obviously I've been following your co-host Allison Gill on what's going on between the J6 committee and the DOJ. Let's listen to Benny Thompson real quick.
The reality is we are conducting our own investigation, and obviously if they want to come and talk, they're perfectly welcome to come and talk, and we have talked to them on other situations, but we can't give them full access to our product. That would be premature at this point because we haven't completed our own work.
So he's saying it's hard to hear there, but he's saying it's premature because we're not done. He's saying they can come look at them. He's saying they're not going to give the transcript. Presumably before June 9th, before they start these hearings, right? What is your take and AG's take? Because I know she said yesterday, if this screws up the Justice Department, that she's going to be pissed because she's been defending the J6 committee. But what do you think?
Absolutely, and I think a lot of people are up in arms. We've been talking about this. Is that Congress can't and they can't charge anything. What they're doing is the January 6th committee is gathering information to give the Department of Justice when they have everything they need. And I love this word, but it's going to taint the investigation if they actually send over information right now. That's why we've got to protect this. They're trying to keep it so that it's a nonpartisan. They're actually trying to protect the DOJ Because if they give them this information, they give them the interviews, one, they're worried about other witnesses coming forward, because all of a sudden, if they're in a federal investigation, it's very different. They're afraid they're not going to speak as freely. And the Department of Justice then will become partisan. So they're actually trying to protect the Department of Justice at this point.
That's what I said yesterday, that they're afraid of looking like they're working in lockstep. Then there are going to be more cries of witch hunt and partisan.
After Bill Barr was in there, I think we need to do everything we can to keep the Justice Department looking as clean as possible and as nonpartisan as possible. I know this isn't going fast enough for a lot of people, but the January 6th committee is not done yet, and they have other witnesses that they want to interview.
Yeah, this is what Jamie Raskin said real quick.
Well, we've conducted nearly 1,000 interviews and have voluminous materials about what took place on January 6th and in the weeks leading up to it. And so it suggests to me that there are witnesses who have spoken to us that they have not spoken to yet, who have some information that may be relevant to crimes that they're investigating. And the evidence that is within our possession belongs to the committee, and so we can release it in our discretion.
Joyce Vance said yesterday, Dana, that it does seem unusual that the J6 committee appears to be going first. She said normally Justice Department wants the first bite at the apple in all of this. So I think it is, because you're right, it's all sort of below the surface. It's hard to understand exactly what's happening here. I think, Jamie, just a couple more Jamie Raskin, and then I'll get your take.
Well, ultimately it's going to be the call of the chair, Chairman Thompson. Obviously, we have an interest, like every other American does, in effective investigation by the Department of Justice and prosecution of people who were behind the criminal events of that day. So I'm certain that the chairman will, in his wisdom, arrive at the right solution about particular pieces of evidence. There may be things that they have that we're interested in seeing that they might be able to share with us.
Yeah, they want to avoid an Oliver North where they give immunity and then it screws up the criminal investigation. So
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very confusing. We have to remember there's several investigations happening simultaneously right now. And if we screw up any of them, it could take down all of them.
Yep.
And so I can understand why they're being very careful, because things are actually progressing in the January 6th committee. They're saying they don't even need Donald to testify because they don't need his testimony. They can't get anything more from him.
Yeah, the most important thing we already heard, and that is a criminal investigation. We are...
Yeah.
It's happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.